Good morning and welcome to another bearing installation video featuring Boca Bearings. Today I'm going to be installing a set of high-performance Boca Bearings into my own personal OS FS-48 Surpass engine. So let's look to the table and I'll show you all the tools that I'm going to be using to do this. Okay, so here's my setup for installing bearings. Now, bearing installation might seem to be a daunting task for people, but it really is quite simple, and I'm going to show you exactly how simple it is for probably 90% of the engines, glow engines that we have here. And the first thing I'm going to have is my set of high-performance Boca bearings. The next thing I've got is my crankcase, empty crankcase ready to accept bearings, and my crankshaft. Now, this is an OS FS Surpass series engine, and it does have camshaft bearings, but I'm not going to be replacing those today because these are in fine shape and those seldom ever really require replacement. So the other tools I've got here is I've got a bottle of Boca's Lightning Lube Road Power to lubricate the internal surfaces and the outside of the bearings prior to use, just to facilitate installation. I've got a small hammer and a piece of wood just to tap the bearings into place. I've got a desk vise here and a socket extension just to drive the crankshaft into the crankcase, and I've got a heat gun to heat the crankcase up and just a protective glove to keep my hands safe from the process. So that's really all that's required to do a bearing installation. So let's get right to the installation. Okay, let's get these bearings installed. So as I just showed all the stuff I've got here to do this, the bearing installation pack that just includes the front bearing and the main crankshaft bearing is ENK, here, let me get this little baggie out of the way inside here, ENK 043HP, and the part number for this will actually be listed in the video description also. So we've got our two bearings here. It's the main crankshaft bearing and our front bearing. And this is the first time I've pulled them out to look at them. This main rear bearing is fully sealed, which I think I want to remove one of those seals and leave one in. Actually, on this engine, I think for the front bearing, I'm gonna leave both seals in place. I think for this rear bearing, I'm going to remove both of these and have a completely open bearing, because most times you'll see that in rear bearings fully opened. So I'm just going to take a pick and just very gently get up under the edge of this. And then just kind of rotate it around here. Once I get up under the edge of that, I'll just rotate it around and pop that out. Now you'll see that these things are pre-greased. That's fine. I am not certain. I'll have to inquire about why one is green and one is black. So here on this side, the black side, there's still like a plastic retainer in there. So there is a proper orientation for this, and I'm trying to remember which way it goes right now. I know I haven't prepped this bearing yet. Let me go ahead and do that. So I like to prep the outside of these bearings and the inside of the case. So I'm just going to use one little squirt. I've got just an empty glass container here that's clean. One little squirt of this Boca Bearing Lightning Lube Road Power, and just a little dropper here, so I can just kind of drop some oil on here, just rub the outside. Just get a little bit of lubrication on the outside there and the inside of the crankcase, the areas where the bearings are going to seat. Now, when I disassemble my engines, I always put a light coating of oil on and in them anyway, as a matter of course, but I'll just do this again here. So, as I said, there is an orientation with these bearings, and if you don't get it right, you'll find that there's some binding. So I think I'm going to go with the, I can't recall off the top of my head which way it goes, we'll just have to find out. I'm going to go with the plastic shield facing the front. And I just slide these onto the main crankshaft, and then I'll install the front bearing first. So let me get my glove on here, position this crankcase here so that I can put the bearing in there. I'm going to heat this up a little bit, and then we will install the front bearing. So I heat the case up just a little bit to facilitate some expansion of the aluminum. And that little bit of expansion helps get the bearing installed. Should be plenty. Take that off and just try to get this positioned as closely as possible. And there you go. Front bearing is installed. And I kind of like to do this every now and then, just put it in the, go ahead and put the crankshaft in this way and feel that bearing. Okay, so as you can see, I didn't get this crankcase very hot at all. So what I'm going to end up doing is heating it up more and putting this bearing in here. Okay, so let me heat this crankshaft or crankcase up a little bit more, and then I'm going to go nose down and we'll drive that bearing into place in the crankshaft. Plenty warm. Now I'm just going to use this little socket extension as a drive. And that bearing is fully installed and seated and spinning nicely. So the plastic shield, that was the plastic retainer that was still left in there, is facing forward on the engine, and the balls, the exposed balls, are facing rearward, and it feels silky smooth. And if you look straight down inside there, you can see that the crank pin, hopefully you can see that the crank pin is riding right where it should be, and that you don't really see the bearing sticking out at all. That lets you know that your bearing is fully seated. And of course, with this particular engine, it also has it uses a Woodruff key. So if your Woodruff key is completely open, which I think I'm going to tap this one more time, is completely exposed, then you're definitely in good shape. So yes. So that's all there is to installing the bearings in probably 90% of engines that only have 2 bearings to install. It's a very simple process, and I highly recommend doing this utilizing Boca bearings.